In this game, you play as Terra Branford, also known as Jane Fantasy, also known as John Fantasy VI. You begin your heroic journey as an enslaved weapon to Gestul's Imperial war machine. This is because of Terra's unique gift, the natural ability to wield magic. 1,000 years ago, the world was ravaged by the War of the Magi. In its aftermath, magic was lost to humanity, which is why the Empire has decided to staple a mind control device onto Terra's forehead. Her squad's current mission is to attack the city of Narshe to investigate a rumor which says that they're hiding a magical creature known as an Esper. After your team fights their way into the mines of Narshe, they're attacked by a lightning whelk named Ymir, who's been trained to fight for the city's militia. Your squad then finds the frozen Esper, and upon seeing it, Terra's magic begins to resonate with it, with the resulting energy overpowering the control over her mind. She loses consciousness, and then wakes up in the home of a man who's sympathetic to her plight. It's important to note that the removal of the mind control device induced a small aneurysm, giving Terra amnesia. Unfortunately, there's no time to rest, as the other townsfolk view her as an Imperial spy. She attempts to escape through a section of the mines, only to end up cornered and injured, with her only hope being a thief named Locke. We learn that he is a member of the Returners, a faction which has been rebelling against the Empire, and so Locke works to get Terra out of the city so that he can bring her to his allies. We then arrive in the Kingdom of Figaro, whose king, Edgar Figaro, is a double agent, but in like a good way. As a secret member of the Returners, he's worked to win the trust of the Empire so that he can undermine it from within. Towards this end, he agrees to give Terra refuge. This barely lasts a day though, since the Empire was already suspicious of him, and so they send one of their top generals to investigate, the Emperor's court mage, Kefka. He employs the genius investigation technique of lighting everything on fire. Unbeknownst to Kefka, the castle is actually a giant vehicle which can travel beneath the sand. This opens up the chance for Edgar and our party to make an escape. After defeating the pursuing soldiers, we travel to the city of South Figaro. While stealing from the townsfolk, we get the trophy Thrifty Spender. From here, we must summit Koltz Mountain, which lies between us and the Returners HQ. Killing the local fauna gets us the trophy Apprentice Warrior, and then we encounter a man named Vargas. Partway through the fight, we're aided by the sudden arrival of Edgar's estranged brother, Sabin Figaro. Apparently, Sabin chose to renounce his claims as a prince, so that he could instead train as a martial artist under Vargas's father, Duncan. Vargas, who is an envious man, believed that Duncan viewed Sabin as his successor, and so he decided to kill his father for the perceived slight. In a one-on-one fight, Sabin is then able to avenge his master. With the strongest character added to our party, we then reach the Returners HQ. Before talking to anyone, we sneak around and steal some stuff, which gets us the trophy Rookie Treasure Hunter. After a little bit of negotiation, Terra eventually agrees to work with the Returners, with our main goal being to get in contact with an Esper so that we can find the means to oppose the Empire's Esper-fueled Magitek weapons. Immediately after establishing this, our hideout is attacked by the Empire, which forces us to flee while Locke goes on his own little side quest. Our escape requires us to go whitewater rafting, at the end of which is a comic relief character. In the process of beating up Ultros, Sabin decides to jump into the water after him. From here, events diverge between Locke, Sabin, and Terra's sides of the story. So let's go in the correct order, starting with Locke. We begin with the Master Thief on the run in South Figaro, after using his talents to slow down the Empire in its pursuit of Terra and her gang. While escaping, he stumbles upon a jail cell containing the Imperial General, Celes, who is imprisoned for refusing to commit war crimes. Due to his traumatic backstory, Locke decides to break her out, and so the pair escape the city. For lore reasons, it's important to note that due to experimentation by the Empire, Celes has been artificially infused with magic. These abilities come in handy as they snag the trophy Field Research Basic, before then encountering an Imperial weapon called the Tunnel Armor. Its destruction marks the end of their escape, as they're in the clear to make their way up to Narshe. We begin Sabin's odyssey as he washes up at the far eastern mouth of the river. From here, he runs into an assassin known only as Shadow. The two agree to travel together, with their first stop being an Imperial camp to the south. At present, their forces are trying and failing to lay siege to the castle of Doma. A major thorn in their side is the Doman King's sworn samurai, Cyan Garamond, who we control as he repels the Empire's assault. Due to an order from the Emperor, control of the Imperial forces here passes from the Honorable General Leo to Kefka, whose first act as commander is to poison the castle's water supply. Despite Sabin's best efforts, he fails to stop Kefka, and so the poison kills almost everyone in the castle, including Cyan's wife and young son. As one of the only survivors, Cyan storms the Imperial camp seeking vengeance, and so he and Sabin work together to fight and then escape from the Imperial forces. From here, our trio continues south into the Phantom Forest, where they find a totally innocuous train, which turns out to be the Phantom Train, the vessel which carries souls to the afterlife. We eventually fight our way to the front, where we then have to fight the train's engine. Beating it into submission allows us to get off just in time, so that Cyan can see his family's souls before they leave for the afterlife. Thoroughly traumatized, our party then reaches the Barren Falls, where Shadow finally decides to tap out of this adventure. And it's a good thing he does, since the next step of our journey requires us to jump off the waterfall, so that we can then drift down to the Veldt continent. Once there, we manage to adopt a feral child, who leads us to a buried diving helmet that we can then use to dive underwater to ride a deep-sea current halfway across the circumference of the planet. We eventually wash up at the port city of Nicaea, where we can then charter a ship to take us to Narshe, bringing Sabin's odyssey to a merciful end. And now here we have Terra's title card, which I don't have an idea for, so it might just be me reading this part word for word. We pick up with Terra as she, Edgar, and the leader of the Returners ride their raft down the river all the way to Narshe. Despite the tensions among our crew, we end up having to work together to defend both the city and its frozen Esper from an attack by the Empire. After fighting through the first few waves of enemies, we're able to directly confront Kefka, who flees the moment he's on the back foot. With the city safe, we're then able to bring Terra back to the Esper. Standing before it causes a strange power to emerge from within her. She then uncontrollably flies into the sky and vanishes. Our remaining party has no choice but to travel out to find her, with our investigation ultimately bringing us to the city of Zozo. While there, we repeatedly get mugged and unmugged, causing us to get the trophy Smart Saver. We then climb to the top of a tower, assault some random guy, and then we find Terra, who's been kept safe here by an Esper named Rama. From him, we learn quite a lot of important things. For one, we get details about the War of the Magi, which is that it was a war fought between Espers and the Magi, with the Magi being humans who had acquired magic by extracting it from Espers. In the war's aftermath, the surviving Espers created a separate dimension where they could live in peace without being hunted by humans. 20 years before the present day, the Gestalian Empire managed a successful heist where they kidnapped around a dozen Espers. It's through the power of said Espers that they've been able to both fuel their Magitek and perform experiments on people like Kefka and Celes. By breaking into the capital to rescue the imprisoned Espers, we should be able to help Terra gain control over her powers. To aid us in this task, Rama kills himself. Doing so turns him into a material called Magicite, which our party can then use to absorb his power and learn magic. From here, our merry band of wizards run into a small problem: the sea. Fortunately, the guy who owns the world's only airship, Setzer, is a deeply wretched person, and so we're able to trick him into kidnapping Celes by having her disguise herself as the opera singer who he was already planning to kidnap. With a little bit of convincing, he flies us over to the capital. After we arrive, we're able to break into the Magitek research facility with the aid of some returner spies. Inside the facility's trash compactor, we find the drained husks of the Espers Ifrit and Shiva, who were able to finish off to acquire their Magicite. As we advance further, we kill a test subject, and then we make our way into the room where they're keeping the Espers. Lucky for us, the Imperial scientists forgot to remove the Kill All the Espers lever, and so we hit that shit and grab 6 new chunks of Magicite. Why did I write it like that? Our actions don't go unnoticed though, and so we're soon approached by Kefka and his troops. To give us the chance to escape, Celes uses her magic to teleport away both herself and the soldiers. Our remaining team heads down to a mine shaft, where we have to fight through more of the Empire's experiments. Most notable is the experiment number 128, whose ability Blood Feast allowed it to heal by biting chunks out of us. This probably would have been easier to deal with if Celes had still been in the party, since she was pretty much our only healer. On top of that, 128 used the ability Blaster to instantly kill both Locke and Edgar, so Sabin's win really came down to the wire. After getting out of the tunnels, Setzer and his airship help us to make a full escape, allowing us to fly back to Zozo. Once there, we bring the gathered Magicite to Terra, with one of them resonating resonating with her and helping to stabilize her power. It's after this that we learn the truth, which is that Terra is a hybrid between a human and an Esper. The Magitek she resonated with was derived from her father, Omen. We further learn that when the world of the Espers was attacked by the Empire, her mother Madeline was killed and both Omen and the infant Terra were taken to be used by the Empire. With our new information, the returners decide to attempt to make contact with the Esper so that we can try to gain their aid. Instead of doing that, I used our new airship to do some exploring, in the midst of which I got the trophy Experienced Warrior. Once the Wanderlust was out of my system, I got back on track and flew over to the Cave of the Sealed Gate, at the end of which we find and unseal the gate. The Imperial Army was waiting for us to do exactly that, so that they could get their hands on more grist for the Esper Mill. This doesn't work either though, as the Espers are both too powerful and angry to be captured. They fly over and carpet bomb the Imperial capital. In the process, they also knocked our airship out of the sky. This forces us to walk back to the capital, where we're then able to use the destruction as a bargaining chip for peace talks. This results in the end of the war, and an agreement for Terra to serve as a mediator between humanity and the Espers. With our airship out of commission, we hop on an Imperial warship led by General Leo Christoph, which takes us to the island where the Espers were last seen. While there, we end up having to help a man named Strago so that he can save his granddaughter from a burning building. We make sure to really take our time with it, grabbing the trophy Veteran Treasure Hunter along the way. At the end, we kill the fire and save the child. Afterwards, Strago tells us the truth of their village, which is that its population are the descendants of the Magi from 1,000 years ago. As they were blamed for the war by non-magic using humans, they sought out a refuge where they could keep themselves and their abilities hidden. Strago is able to use blue magic, allowing him to learn certain enemy abilities by witnessing them in battle. Meanwhile, his granddaughter's magic is a bit more unorthodox. Realm has the ability to bring to life anyone she paints, which she can then use for violence. With Strago's help, we're able to make our way into the cave where the Espers are hiding. Down there, we end up fighting Ultros for the 3rd time, at which point Realm also joins the party. The 4 of us eventually reach the Espers, with whom we're able to negotiate peace, and so everyone lived happily ever after. At least until Kefka starts killing the Espers for their magicite. It would appear that the Emperor was not entirely truthful about his desire for peace, nor was he truthful with General Leo about his orders, as he's legitimately surprised by the deception. As he attempts to stop Kefka's massacre, he's tricked by the mage's illusions. After Leo lets his guard down, Kefka's able to disarm and then stab him in the back. The Espers who are still behind the gate open it to try and rescue the ones who are being killed, which turns out to be part of the Empire's plan. Kefka is able to gather up their magicite, and then he and the Emperor go to explore deeper into the Esper's realm. Their efforts cause the continent of the sealed cave to rise into the sky, and then they reach a trio of statues known as the Warring Triad. Eons ago, 3 gods emerged from the heavens. Fearing one another's power, they began to fight, with the mortals of this world being caught in the crossfire. The humans who were forced to fight for the gods were turned into the Espers. Eventually, the 3 gods realized that their battle was fruitless, and so they sealed themselves away, with the positioning of their petrified forms maintaining the balance upon which the world and its magic rests. So of course the Emperor and Kefka want that power for themselves. Our party rushes over to prevent this existential threat. On the way, we're forced to fight through waves of Imperial forces, culminating in a 4th battle with Ultros alongside a demon named Typhon. Afterwards, we fight a flying ship called the Air Force. After fighting them all off, we land on the floating continent and advance forward, only to be stopped by a creature called the Ultima Weapon. Now, this might be a bit of a nitpick, but this boss is odd. It has such an amazing design, and it's unique because it's one of the only bosses whose sprite is animated. On top of that, it has a pretty interesting spot in the lore, with it being a creature that was built during the War of the Magi, after which it was sealed in the cave leading to the Esper realm. And so with all that, why is it guarding a random hallway in the middle of the game? Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty important hallway, but like, this thing looks like a super boss. Imagine, you go spelunking, you find some lore, and then you're like, oh, here's the thing the lore was about, and you fight it, wow. Meanwhile, this guy comes so far out of nowhere that I thought I wasn't supposed to be fighting him. I was like, this isn't the thing that leads to where we're going, right? This has nothing to do with it. Like, he has nothing to do with Kefka, he has nothing to do with the Emperor, like, he doesn't need to be here. It kind of felt like they were just, like, padding the section. They're like, oh, we need some kind of fight, right? We can't just have that fight. Getting back on track, we arrive at the summit just in time to see a disagreement between the Emperor and Kefka, stemming from a fundamental difference between the two of them. From Emperor Gestal's perspective, the pursuit of power is a means to an end. He's driven by the ambition to build an empire that can dominate the entire world. Meanwhile, Kefka sees the pursuit of power as its own end, and so he possesses no limits, not to how much power he wants, nor what he's willing to do to attain it. Kefka would be happy to destroy everything if it meant that he could sit atop the ashes, which is exactly what he does. He uses the power of the Warring Warring Triad to kill the Emperor, before then breaking the balance between them and unleashing their full potential. While there's nothing we can do to prevent the events that have been set in motion, we're at least able to escape with the aid of Shadow. Our airship doesn't last long though, as the power of the Warring Triad is indiscriminate, unleashing massive bursts of energy while also rending the Earth itself. We pick up with Celes as she wakes up from a year-long coma. After the catastrophe, she and a Magitek scientist named Sid washed up on a small deserted island. While she was recovering, he worked to keep the two of them alive. It's from him that we learn that over the course of the past year, the world has continued to decay, with plant and animal life dying off as the planet becomes increasingly inhospitable. A few days after Celes woke up, Sid passes away due to illness. Trapped alone and without any hope for the future, Celes makes an attempt on her own life. Fortunately, her magically enhanced body is too strong for her to kill herself, forcing her to live long enough to see an injured bird that was bandaged using Locke's bandana. Taking this as a sign that there is hope to be found somewhere in the world, Celes uses a raft to drift to the mainland. Before I continue, I just want to quickly complain about the fact that there is actually a way to save Sid. It seems like it's pretty hard to do by accident, but even so, it's baffling that they'd write a storyline this good and then include an option to skip it. After asking around, we start to piece together the mainland's status quo. Basically, Kefka's twisted the capital of the Empire into a giant tower, so that he can sit on top of it and shoot people with the magic he stole from the Warring Triad. We also hear rumors about a martial artist to the north, and so we head up and find Sabin right as he's rescuing a child while the local town is being hit by a Kefka beam. The two of us save the kid from a collapsing building, and then we add Sabin back into the party. While continuing further north, we grab the trophy Moneybags, before then meeting the leader of a crew of thieves named Gerard. Their little band plans to raid the castle of Figaro. To get through to the vault though, we have to fight a strange tentacle creature that's coiled itself around the castle's engine. Unfortunately, all the noise from the battle alerts King Edgar, and so he orders all the thieves to be hanged. He lets us live though, since we're cool. We then make our way to a town where we find Setzer. With a single hearty pep talk, we cure his depression, and he then takes us to the tomb of his dead lover, Darryl. In the past, the two of them were rival airship pilots, who kept trying to push the tech as far as it could go. Eventually, this got Darryl killed, and so Setzer decided to repair her airship and then bury it alongside her. At some point during the apocalypse, her tomb became haunted, forcing us to fight a Dullahan. And then, by desecrating her remains, we're able to acquire the airship Falcon. After stopping by an auction house to accidentally spend $50,000 on an item we already own, we head up to a mansion owned by a man named Ozer. During the time skip, he decided to hire Realm as an indentured painter, resulting in his entire house being filled with living paintings, the most powerful of which became a demon named Chatternuk. I want to quickly dig into this fight, since it was difficult in a fairly interesting way. Chatternuk alternates between two forms, the demon and the goddess. While the magic of its demon form inflicts the most direct damage, the goddess is the real threat. This is because she can use an ability called Entice, which operates like confusion with one small difference, which is that it can only be removed by dying. This means that whoever's hit by it will do fun things like heal Chatternuk and attack other party members until we either kill them, or fortunately in my case, they kill themselves. The combination of that with the demon form's magic made the fight a lot more complicated. Since we saved his life, we're able to pressure Ozer into releasing Realm from her contract. We also take the Magicite Lakshmi, which gets us the trophy Magicite Collector. After this, we encounter a woman named Lola, who's been receiving letters from her lover who lives in the town of Miranda, aka a town that was destroyed by Kefka months ago. It doesn't take too long for us to trace the carrier pigeons back to Mount Zozo, where we find Cyan. He's apparently spent the past year Dear Evan Hansening Lola. We have no problem letting Cyan back into the squad though, since it's not like the rest of us are exemplars of morality. The next leg of our quest brings us to the town of Mobliz. As mentioned earlier, it was destroyed. What I didn't mention was that the few people who did survive have been looked after and protected by Terra. After we work with her to kill a demon named Humbaba, she finds her resolve to protect the future, seeing it as her responsibility to the next generation. We then head over to a cave on the Veldt continent, inside which we find a critically injured Shadow. Before we can help him, we're attacked by the Behemoth Kings who put him in this state. We're able to easily kill them, and so we take him to recover in Tamasa. Despite helping him, the ungrateful fuck sneaks off to the Coliseum on the other side of the map, and so we head over there to beat him up and force him back into the party. We head up to Doma Castle, where Cyan gets trapped in his sleep by the Dream Stooges, Laragorn, Kurlax, and Mobius. Lucky for us, Sabin kept his Psycho Portal after spending a summer at Whispering Rock, and so we're able to hop into Cyan's brain. Now I want to quickly note a dumb mistake I made. So you have to fight the Dream Stooges all together, and I assume that they all possess the ability to revive each other, similar to the three boys from Final Fantasy V. That isn't at all the case. Only Kurlax can do that, and so the fight becomes a breeze once you kill him. So technically my victory here was a rematch after I spent 40 minutes losing to them 2 party members ago. After killing them, we delve deeper into Cyan's mind palace, until we eventually find an entity named Rexsoul. It is the merged form of the souls that died during the War of the Magi. The depth of Cyan's grief over everything he's endured is delicious to Rexsoul, and so he's decided to make Cyan's brain his house. By killing Rexsoul, we allow Cyan the chance to process his grief. In doing so, he gains access to all of his techniques as a swordsman, which gets us the trophy Master Samurai. Shortly after this, we wander over to a random cabin in the woods, where we find Sabin's master Duncan, alive and well. Regardless, he teaches Sabin his ultimate technique, Phantom Rush. And then 8 minutes later, Sabin reaches level 42 and learns Soul Spiral, which becomes the last of his martial arts techniques and unlocks the trophy Master Monk. With our larger crew, we're then able to delve into the Phoenix Cave. To navigate it, you have to create 2 separate parties, and so you can bring in a maximum of 8 people. Even then, it's still quite a difficult area. Eventually though, we make our way to the end of the cave where we find Locke. He's come all this way to acquire the Phoenix Magicite, which is said to be able to bring back the dead. He tries to use it to revive his deceased lover, Rachel. This actually works, briefly though, but it still gives Locke the chance to get closure. After recruiting a couple backbenchers, we find a mimic named Gogo. Recruiting him means we've officially rounded out the full 14-person party, and that does nothing. I guess Gogo and Umaru don't count as friends. From here, there's a scattershot of optional bosses that I could mention, but the most interesting is a creature called Death Gaze. It can be found chilling in the sky at random points around the world map. Crashing your airship into it begins the fight. Its repertoire is small but beefy, with it beginning with the spell Level 5 Death. What this does is that it inflicts death on any party member whose level is divisible by 5. Outside of this, it can also inflict death individually, which combined with its other offensive options makes it a solid threat. The main quirk of the fight is that after a few turns, Death Gaze will flee. It actually retains the damage dealt from fight to fight, so all you have to do is chase it down a couple more times and you'll be able to kill it. Doing so causes it to cough up the Magicite and Bahamut. I can't help but imagine how fun the fight would be if you had to actually just do like 50,000 damage in 3 turns. With nearly every Magicite collected, our party finally makes their way to Kefka's tower. Similar to the Phoenix Cave, this dungeon splits us into 3 parties. Each of them will navigate their own sections while opening paths for the other teams. Before we get into that, I just want to quickly talk about how I interpret the symbolism of the tower. It being constructed from the remains of the Imperial capital is representative of Kefka being a cancerous outgrowth of Gestalian Imperial ideology. From what we know about his past, he was originally an Imperial soldier who was the first quote-unquote successful experiment for artificial magic infusion. There was only one small side effect, which is that it shattered his mind. Taking all this together, my somewhat headcanon-y interpretation is that the brain scrambling caused Kefka's mind, which by that point was already filled with state propaganda about conquest and acquiring power for the Empire, to distill it all into a single core idea of pursuing power by any means necessary. The dungeon itself is a massive structure, but one that is pretty linear for all 3 parties, except for one brief section where 2 of the parties end up trading places. On the way through, I accidentally got the trophy Master Mechanist. It wasn't relevant until now, but Edgar's main method of fighting is with an array of mechanical tools, which I had been passively finding all throughout my playthrough. By random chance, I had locked steel from an enemy called Gamma, which grabbed the last one. On a similar note, throughout the post-apocalyptic world, we were able to find 8 legendary dragons. They were always off to the side though, so there wasn't really a reason to explicitly point them out. Let it be known that they were there and all of them were pretty easy, except for the Earth Dragon. He was an outlier. Within Kefka's tower, we find the last 2 dragons. First the Gold Dragon and then the Skull Dragon. Killing them breaks the seal on the ultimate Magicite, Crusader, which materializes in our inventory with surprisingly little pump. Regardless, it becomes our 27th and final Magicite, unlocking the trophy Magicite Completionist. So the 3 parties I had going through the dungeon weren't exactly equal to one another, which is how I ended up in a situation where the C team had to fight a giant mounted turret named the Guardian. I'd been pretty negligent with them, so I had to spend 15 minutes teaching them how to use support and healing spells. And with that, we're pretty much in the clear. I actually have surprisingly little to say about the fight since it doesn't really have a unique gimmick. It just deals a lot of damage very quickly. Ultimately, I just won by concentrating all the best equipment on this party. After the 3rd string crew successfully kills a god, it's then up to the B team to fight the goddess of the Warring Triad. Now, going into this fight, I was feeling pretty confident. I mean, there's no way Edgar's team is going to have a hard The goddess is more of a puzzle than a conventional fight. You see, the primary gimmick is that after you attack her 8 times, she'll use the ability Cloudy Heaven, which makes it so that the whole party will die in 20 seconds, and that anyone who dies during that time will turn into a zombie. While there are ways to get around Cloudy Heaven after it's been used, I found it more convenient to try and win the fight within the 8 attack limit. The way I did this was by using a piece of equipment called the Master Scroll, which allows you to hit 4 times when you attack, but with reduced damage. Collectively, all 4 hits count as 1 attack, and so that gives us a solid window to work with. That said, there were still some kinks in the plan, like the fact that Shadow's weapons accidentally healed her during the first attack. Another issue is that whenever she's attacked physically, there's a 1 in 3 chance that she'll counter with the ability Overture, which causes the target to take any physical attacks aimed at her. At the end of the day though, it all worked out and we managed to kill her right after she used Cloudy Heaven. From here, the best party goes to fight the weakest triad, Fiend. His main gimmick is that he can use ice to freeze people. It's not guaranteed to hit everyone, which makes it even funnier when he started the fight freezing the whole party, forcing me to sit there for an actual entire minute while he just kept attacking. This is the A-team we're talking about though, so it's not like he was able to do much during that window. At the halfway mark of the fight, his aura begins to tremble violently, which means that he gains the ability to nullify random elements with the ability Force Field. This makes 0 difference though, since Terra, Celes, and Sabin all have the non-elemental spell Ultima. With the triad dead, our 3 parties unite into one, and we're able to head up to confront Kefka. Before we can fight him directly, we must first ascend the statue of the gods, beginning with the base Visage. It, along with its 2 arms, can throw out a solid array of attacks that do a good job to set the pace for the rest of the fight. Once they're defeated, we can then climb up to the center of the statue, where we must fight 4 different enemies, who will quickly go over an approximate order of difficulty. We start with Power, who primarily throws out physical attacks, the strongest of which is called 10-hit combo, which he only uses upon dying. Overall, they're pretty easy to dodge, so they're not that big of a threat. Next we have Machine, who has the largest variety of abilities. While it doesn't do that much damage, it instead throws you off balance so that you can't really focus on the other threats. After that, we have Tiger, who is, hypothetically, the strongest of the 4. He has 4 different abilities, 2 of which do intense fire damage, 1 which freezes party members, and then 1 that turns the party into zombies. Of the 4, he only ever really froze people, so he wasn't that big of a threat for me. Finally, we have Magitek, who ended up being the biggest threat to me because he capitalizes on my greatest weakness, myself. You see, 90% of his abilities are just run-of-the-mill spells. That is, until he's near death. When hit below 10,000 HP, he'll have a 1 in 3 chance to cast Graviga, which reduces the entire party's HP by 3/4. And then when he's below 5,000, he'll do that along with 2 66% chances to cast Dispel on random party members. For those who don't know, Dispel removes any buffs you've applied to a party member. So hypothetically, if you gave someone Haste, Protect, and Shell, you'd then have to reapply all 3 of them. Worst case scenario, you end up beating Magic, but then you're forced to head up to the final section of the statue while over half your party is either debuffed, dying, or both. Speaking of which, the top of the statue features 2 figures, Lady and Rest. Now, hypothetically, Lady is pretty easy to kill first. She doesn't have that much HP, and while she is healed by elemental attacks, you can pretty quickly outpace it. I, however, did not know that, and so I prioritized killing Rest first, at which point Lady revived him. Other than that, she uses the spell White Wind, which heals both herself and Rest by however much HP she has at the time of casting. The real threat here is Rest, who only has a few abilities, but they're a lot. For most of the fight, he casts Meltdown and Tornado, both of which hit everyone in the battle. Meltdown just does damage, while Tornado reduces everyone's HP to 1/16 its original value. Once you get him down below 10,000 HP, he'll switch to casting Meteor every single turn. Also, whenever you attack him, he'll have a 1 in 3 chance of casting Meteor and a 1 in 3 chance of casting Trine, which inflicts both silence and blindness to the entire party. After you finally kill him, he casts Repose, which kills a party member. This forces us to engage with a unique mechanic of the final fight. You see, at the start you're able to organize your party in the order you'd like to use them in, starting with the initial 4 followed by the backbench ranging from 5 to 12. So basically, if someone's dead during a transition between phases, the next person in the queue will be added to the main party. The problem for me is that among my team, only 4 were really viable. This put me in an awkward position where I was pretty much guaranteed to lose one of my top guys right before the final phase of the fight. And so, with a C-lister replacing Sabin, we reach the summit of the statue, where we bear witness to Kefka's divine form. Befitting his status, he has multiple extremely powerful abilities. For example, he starts the fight with Heartless Angel, which sets the whole party's HP to 1. He'll then do this every 7 turns. During the 6 between them, it doesn't get much better, as all of them have a 1 in 3 chance of being Havoc Wing, which does an absurd amount of damage. It's technically dodgeable, but I don't think Celes knows that. When he isn't using Havoc Wing, he's still going to be casting some pretty powerful magic, or just like punching you. Phase 2 begins when he's below 32,000 HP, with him adding a couple new abilities. The first, which he opens the phase with, is Forsaken. Despite its elaborate animation, it doesn't seem to do much. It was around this point that I died after 3 consecutive Havoc Wings. For my second attempt, I had a genius idea. If I only bring 4 party members, then maybe the dead one won't be replaced. In a sense, I was right. Sabin wasn't replaced, but he was still gone. With only 3 party members, I felt like the attempt was dead, and so I had Celes and Terra spam Ultima in a Hail Mary attempt at winning. With Kefka's death, magic leaves the world once and for all. Despite that, the Earth begins to heal, and so our party looks forward to the future with hope in their hearts. Since this was my first time playing the game, I made sure not to look anything up, which also means I missed a lot. That meant that I had to do a second playthrough, so let's go through a highlight reel of everything important. The first trophy I got was Item Detector. Now this one's a bit odd, because your hidden item progress doesn't carry over between playthroughs. This meant that I didn't actually know which items I had missed. All I know is that the one you're seeing on screen is the last one I got. After this, I started the one side quest I missed in my first playthrough. In his youth, Strago was a monster hunter who had been searching for a legendary creature named Hedon. An old friend gives him a lead on a sighting, and we're able to go to its cave to fight it. That cave just so happened to be the last location we needed for the trophy Adventurous Wayfarer. Continuing with Strago, I decided to start filling out his blue magic repertoire. There are 24 in total, but we only need 20 for the trophy, and so after grabbing a bunch off an enemy named Dark Force, we head over to a creature called Mover, who teaches us Mighty Guard. This gets us the trophy, Master Blue Mage. I then went around to grab a couple hidden chests. The first is found in the Cultist Tower, behind a secret door that needs to be activated with an invisible button. The second is buried in Kefka's trash heap. It was hidden so well that I struggled to find it, even with a guide. Regardless, it gets us the trophy, Legendary Treasure Hunter. Also, small tangent, because of the sheer amount of areas that are like inaccessible after you first visit them, Item Detector and Legendary Treasure Hunter were like the most stressful trophies. Like the entire second playthrough, I was like, oh god, like if I screw this up, I have to do a whole third playthrough. But it worked out, so it's all good. From here, I went to get the trophy Seasoned Hero, which requires us to get all 14 party members to level 50. To expedite this, I went to go grab some rare items that require a little bit of explaining. So after re-recruiting Locke, you can go to find an old man who has the Magitek Ragnarok. He offers to either give it to you or forge it into a sword. I obviously took it because I wanted all the magic. More importantly, it allows you to use the ability Metamorphose, which has a chance of turning an enemy into an item. When doing so, there are 4 options for what it could turn into, with different enemies having different pools for the available options. For the enemy Vasegiada, 3 of them are standard potions, and the 4th is the Growth Egg, which has the small effect of doubling earned EXP for the person holding it. Earlier in the game, you can find 1 Growth Egg, and so all I needed was 3 more so the whole active party could benefit. Somehow though, I was under the impression that using 2 Growth Eggs quadrupled EXP, which is not at all the case. Despite that, I grabbed an extra 4 eggs and kept them equipped for hours before I realized I wasn't doing anything. Regardless, using the eggs helped us to get the trophy, Seasoned Hero. We then went over to the Colosseum, which has a unique mechanic where if you offer up a rare item and then you defeat the enemy presented, you will receive a medium rare item. Since there's a trophy for winning 10 battles, I decided to pair that with grabbing some Colosseum exclusive items. First, I traded a sword called Flame Tongue for one called Organics. After that, I exchanged a spear called Impartisan for the Cat Ear Hood, which itself could then be exchanged for the Merit Award. At that point, I was out of unique things to get, so I just grabbed like 5 more cat hoods. Our next trophy centers on Setzer and his unique ability, Slot. When you use it, there are a lot of things that it could be, but the one that matters to us is Joker's Death, which requires you to get 3 sevens. The odds of this happening are super low, so like all good gamblers, we're gonna cheat. By repeatedly pausing the game, you can somewhat reliably get the first 2 sevens. Unfortunately, the last one's controlled by RNG, so it still took around 20 minutes of attempts before I landed Joker's Death. The last of our crew to have their own trophy is the feral child, Gao. His unique mechanic is that he's able to wield the spirits of his enemies by channeling their rage. He initially has 9, and to learn more, you must go to the Veldt. Within this region, there are 252 enemies, who you can only encounter here if you found them elsewhere in the game. The way that you learn their rages is by encountering them in battle here, and then tossing Gao at them. After one of your next few encounters, he'll pop back up having learned the rages of both the enemies you sent him to, as well as the enemies you defeated right before he reappeared. This means that at most, you can learn 6 rages at a time, but in practice it'll probably be like 2. Fortunately, you're only required to grab 50 for the trophy, Master of the Wild. The last trophy we need is Field Research Professional, which requires us to find all 346 enemies in the game. Throughout my second playthrough, I gradually worked through all the ones I missed, with only one of them being notable enough to mention, in Tangier. So you can only find him before the apocalypse, and due to this, he's one of the toughest enemies in the game. His main gimmick is that when he's asleep, he's intangible, and also he starts to fight asleep. On top of that, he's healed by elemental magic, and so at this point in the game, your only option is to use a spell to wake him up, and then to start punching. Once he's awake, he'll almost immediately cast the spell Meteor, and then put himself back to sleep. The strategy I figured out was to cast Stop, which wakes him up, but then immobilizes him for long enough for us to get some hits in. For most enemies, that would be the end of things, but not this guy. He inexplicably has 32,000 HP. For context, I initially tried fighting him immediately after getting the airship, and so the meteor attack was enough of a hurdle that it forced me to come back later in the playthrough. Once you have enough HP though, the fight becomes very manageable. Skipping all the way back to the post-game, we wander over to a location called the Dinosaur Forest, where you have a 1 in 16 chance of encountering our final enemy, Brachiosaur. By this point, I assumed I was strong enough to deal with just about anything. Then here comes Brachiosaur to punch me in the throat. Like, I still won, but it was looking dicey for a second there. After we defeat Brachiosaur, we receive the trophy Field Research Professional, at which point we receive not just the Platinum Trophy for Final Fantasy VI, but also the last Platinum for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection, Master of 6. In the process of getting the Platinum, my first playthrough took just under 35 hours, while my second added an extra 36.5, bringing the full Platinum time to 71.5 hours. Overall, I'd say that it was a pretty great Platinum, built on top of an absolutely incredible game. The only real issue I have with both, at least from a completionist perspective, is how it feels like it leaves a couple loose ends. The smaller, more fixable ones are the little tasks that probably should have been trophies, but for whatever reason weren't. For example, the party member Mog can learn 8 dances based on different biomes throughout the game world. Since all the other party members who have unique learnable skills have their own dedicated trophies, I feel like they could have given Mog like a bronze or something. Speaking of other party members, some of their trophies were a bit weird. Gao only requiring around 20% of his rages makes sense, since acquiring them was pretty tedious, but Strago's blue magic ended up being very interesting. In total, he can learn 24, with one of them, Force Field, being exclusive to the Fiend fight. Out of everything, the biggest loose end was the complete lack of a super boss. With how well designed so much of this game is, I was really hoping for some kind of post-game challenge, similar to what we got with Omega in Final Fantasy V. Fun fact, in the original Final Fantasy VI, there were files for an incomplete boss called the Tsar Dragon, who was later reworked into a full-on super boss for 2 different re-releases, but not this one. After the Platinum, my first goal was to get the whole party to level 99. I was expecting it to be a bit of a nightmare, but it was actually pretty manageable. The main strategy I used had Setzer as the main damage dealer, since he has a unique dice weapon that's legitimately unstoppable. Basically, he throws out 3 dice, and then it multiplies the value of the 3 dice with his level, which is then doubled. If the 3 dice are all the same, it then multiplies the initial total by the face number. On its own, it's really good, but then the Master Scroll lets him toss it out 4 times. If you then give him the Genji Glove, he can equip a second weaker pair of dice in his other hand, all but guaranteeing the end of the fight. With this strategy, we're able to grind up to level 99 in just 16 hours. Now let's get into what I actually expected to be the worst part, Gao's rages. Going into the Veldt, I assumed it was completely random which enemies you encounter, which would make getting specifically the last few rages an RNG nightmare. In reality, it's a predictable system, where there are 64 groups with 8 enemy formations in each of them. As an example, if you beat an enemy formation from group 2, your next encounter will be randomly selected from the 8 formations in group 3. And so if you make a save before that, you can reload over and over again until you find the specific group you're looking for. At that point, the only real choke point was a weirdly specific problem I ran into. As I've mentioned before, you can only encounter enemies on the Veldt if you've previously fought them, specifically in that save file. Now here's the problem. The in-game bestiary isn't tied to your save file, so I was never sure which enemies I hadn't encountered in my second playthrough. To get around this, I used a guide so that I could make sure to fight all of the missable Veldt enemies. Here's the thing though, there were a lot of enemies in the post-apocalyptic world who weren't listed in the guide because they technically weren't missable. They're in the post-game, you can find them whenever you want, but if I didn't specifically find them in the second playthrough, I'd be re-rolling them over and over again like, oh, did I miss them? Like, am I wasting my time? Case in point, there was an enemy named Dropper who I could not find on the Veldt. Eventually I caved, went to find him, and then went back to the Veldt to get the raid, only to later realize that I was wrong. I had found him in the second playthrough, and I knew that for a fact because he was one of the enemies that I needed for Field Research Professional. Like, I had a specific clip of him in the second playthrough. I was just super unlucky. And so, after spending an obscene amount of time running around South Africa, I was rewarded with a nice even 251 rages. Yeah, so it turns out my best efforts were all for nothing. A couple hours into my second playthrough, I somehow missed the enemy Chipper Rabbit, which means that the only way to get all the rages in a single save file would be to do an entire third playthrough, while meticulously hitting every single enemy encounter again. Instead, I decided to take the coward's way out by reloading my first playthrough. I had to have gotten the Chipper Rabbit there, since going into the second playthrough it was already in my bestiary. I would now like to walk you through the story of a miracle. Picture me, John D. Gamer, seconds after reloading my save. I'm sitting there, stewing in the knowledge that I'll never have all 252 rages at once. And then I open the rage menu, where I see it. To close out the video, let's talk about the rare items that I had to get for 100% completion. First, there was the Cursed Ring, which you get with the ability Metamorphose. Next, we have the Celestiad. It can be acquired in multiple ways, but I ended up getting 5 of them while grinding to level 99 because they were a rare drop from Brachiosaur. A little later, I reloaded a save so that I could get Ragnarok as a sword, which we can then trade in at the Coliseum for Lightbringer. This added an extra 30 minutes to our total time. And lastly, we have the Cursed Shield. After grabbing it in Narshe, you need to use it in 256 battles, so that it transforms into the Paladin Shield. Since it was the last thing I did, I decided to go to Celes's Coma Island so that I could kill the weak enemies there. It probably would have been smart to do this throughout the game. For 100% completion, it took us a total of 97 hours. All in all, it wasn't particularly difficult, but it also wasn't worth it.